Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange Brown Talk podcast, our Browns Jets preview edition of the pod. Dan Labbe with Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock, Lance Reisland is going to join and give us his scouting report on the Jets in the next segment. We're going to come back at the end and make our picks. We usually do storylines here off the top, but before we recorded this podcast, news came out that Paul DePodesta is leaving the Cleveland Browns. He will be joining the Colorado Rockies as their head of baseball operations. Not sure what his official title is going to be yet, but Mary Kay, this is obviously a significant development for the Browns because Paul DePodesta had his hands in a lot of different things. I know there was a lot of angst from Browns fans about, what exactly does Paul do? What is his role here? He had become a target of a lot of fans, just as this thing has spiraled in the last couple of years. But Paul DePodesta is gone. And I think the thing people want to know more than anything is, what does this mean for Andrew Berry? What does this mean for Kevin Stefanski? Because obviously he does have his fingerprints all over the hire of those two guys.
Yeah, he really does. But I've been told that it really doesn't have anything to do with the status of Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry. This has nothing to do with it. Those guys did not answer to Paul DePodesta, and he was ready for a change. He was ready for his new challenge. He had been here for 10 years. That's a long, long time for him. He had bounced around a lot in his career, and he took on this challenge. Jimmy Haslam always called him a valuable thought partner. Andrew called him that as well. And again, he was the chief strategy officer. He kind of oversaw the whole process, brought a lot of analytics to everything, not just drafting, but just the whole medical side of it and all of that too, the workout stuff. But it was time for him to go. And this does not mean that Andrew and Kevin are to follow. That's not what this is about.
Yeah, I think the key here is that he wasn't fired, right? He's leaving of his own volition. He wants to go back to baseball, which of course is what he was known for. He worked for the Indians way back when, and then of course became famous with Moneyball and was portrayed by Jonah Hill somehow in that movie. That was like a combination of a bunch of different people, but I think that's the key in this, Ashley. So we tried to sort of project what this could mean. Jimmy Haslam didn't go into DePodesta's office and say, "Get out of here." He's leaving because he wants a change. He wants to do something different. So I suppose you can make the case that maybe they lose an advocate in Paul DePodesta, but everything we've heard from the Haslams over the last few years is that Andrew and Kevin don't need an advocate. The Haslams seem to really appreciate what those two mean for this organization.
Yeah, and it's like Mary Kay put in her story, this idea that even way back to the owners' meetings, Jimmy Haslam has done nothing but indicate that Kevin and Andrew are basically safe after this year because they do not have their franchise quarterback. They're still figuring out quarterback. So, of course, when you have a losing team, a team that has lost as much as the Browns have the last 2 years, you always kind of, I think, have to be on the lookout for, could that shift come? But this move doesn't signal that for all the reasons Mary Kay laid out there at the beginning. Really just the fact that he is leaving on his own accord. But I do think, like Paul DePodesta, I was thinking about this as I was sitting there, had become sort of this boogeyman for Browns fans, right? Like this guy that you could blame a lot on as a fan. Fans didn't really know what he did. But again, it's not a move that the Browns made. It's a move Paul DePodesta made on his own.
Yeah, and I think, I just don't know how much changes, right? Like if you're sitting here and you're angry that this team is 2-6 and they went 3-14 last year, I don't know how much this changes the direction of this organization, because again, Mary Kay, when we talk about Jimmy and D, all they do is praise Kevin and Andrew, and they seem really happy with the job Kevin has done. They seem happy with the job Andrew has done. All of this can change by January if the second half goes poorly, if the offense continues to struggle. Nothing is off the table as we go through this, but just right now, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like Paul DePodesta leaving the organization, again, because he wasn't fired. It doesn't feel like this is some sort of sea change, like this necessarily changes the direction this franchise is going to go.
No, it really doesn't. But I think when you look at it, when you have someone who has the title of Chief Strategy Officer and their record in their tenure is 56-99-1, something is wrong with the strategy. And right? I mean, how can you justify continuing on along those lines when clearly it didn't accomplish what they hoped it would accomplish when they first hired him? If it was going to work out the way that it should have, they should have gotten close to a Super Bowl during his tenure. They did a lot of things. They traded down in 2016 to get that haul of picks. They kind of embarked on a tanking situation, although that's debatable. But they went 1-31 in 2016 and 2017 in his first 2 years here, and they never really were able to maximize the analytics benefits that he was supposed to bring. And so I think it just ran its course. And in addition to him being ready for a new challenge, I think it just didn't fit anymore. And now we'll have to see where this is going. But again, I don't think that this spells the end by any stretch of the imagination of Andrew or Kevin.
Yeah, and I think I don't know how we'll ultimately write the legacy of Paul DePodesta here. I mean, it starts with that 1-31 and all those draft picks, and then it gets detoured into this weird, we're going to fire Sashi Brown and hire John Dorsey, and that sort of sidelined Paul in a lot of ways. They hire Freddie Kitchens. Then it swings back to a more Paul DePodesta approach where he brings back Andrew. Obviously, they hired Kevin first, and that was a guy that they had interviewed before they hired Freddie. I don't know how we ultimately write the Paul DePodesta legacy chapter of the Browns book, Ashley, because there wasn't a lot of winning. There were clear plans. Did they work? Maybe a little bit, but not fully. So I don't know ultimately how we write. Do you just call it a straight failure? Do you say mixed bag? I don't know. I can't figure out. I'm leaning towards it just didn't work. It failed. But I don't know how we're going to write this chapter of the Paul DePodesta part.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and there's a lot of factors at play, and I do think some of the mystery in terms of what he did. Look, I've been on the beat for 5 years. I think I got Paul DePodesta in a press conference like one time, right? This wasn't somebody who was at the forefront in the same way Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski are. Again, I think he kind of became that figurehead where Browns fans could point to and be like, look at this guy's title. What does he do? Is he the one responsible for all this? Is he the puppeteer pulling the strings? Like, I think it's the unknown that kind of adds to that. What Mary Kay said about the record, that's certainly a part of it, right? But there's also this idea of, hey, this was an organization that post 99 hasn't been able to find a ton of stability. So yes, the beginning of his tenure, there's all these crazy things happening. But you look now, and this regime, it's gotten things fairly stable here right now, which wasn't always the case. So it's definitely a mixed bag. And like, we could have a whole other podcast where I put up my red yarn bulletin board about why I think Moneyball never worked, not even in baseball. It still doesn't work, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, full disclosure, I didn't watch Moneyball until like 2 years ago. Just randomly, I was bored one night and I watched Moneyball. And one of my first thoughts was like, man, there were some really good players on those A's teams that they don't talk about. This went a lot deeper than just converting a catcher to a first baseman and him getting on base a bunch. But anyway, that's another pod. We'll probably spend a little more time on Paul DePodesta as we go along through next week's pods, Hey MK, all of that stuff. But Mary Kay, we want to talk about one more thing here that's going to happen on Sunday that's very important, and that is Tommy Rees is going to call plays for the Cleveland Browns. We heard from Tommy today, to me at least, the thing that stood out, and maybe this is just what you're supposed to say if you're the new play caller, but the thing that stood out to me is when he talked about Nick Saban kind of hammering home this idea of get your best players in positions to do what they do best. I mean, it seems so simple, right? Get your best players in positions to do the things they do best. Keep it simple for them. And if you do that over and over again, they'll have success. I don't know how that translates to Sunday. We'll see. But that was my big takeaway from what he said today.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. When you look at Tommy Rees, he actually has 4 years of play calling under his belt at a very, very high level. So it's not like he's never done it before. Sometimes you have a coordinator that starts to call plays in the NFL and they've never done it before. Kevin Stefanski, when he started to call plays for the Minnesota Vikings, it's not like he had 3 or 4 years in the college ranks under his belt. So Tommy has some experience doing it. And when you have to do that, when your boss is Nick Saban, that's very challenging. And so he's been through the heat. He's been through the fire of what it's like to be, having all that pressure at the end of the game, having to do the math and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that you're right about that. He will try to maximize the talent on this football team. And they certainly need that because that has not happened to this point.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we've seen Nick Saban make and remake careers. So maybe this is going to be another one. Tommy's so young. He thinks so much like Kevin, too. So I'm curious what that looks like. But I will say, one of my criticisms when Kevin's play calling has struggled has sort of been, I almost feel like Kevin looks at it as like the nameless gray faces line that we hear sometimes. Like, it's not so much, Jerry Jeudy has to touch the ball. Quinshawn Judkins, this is the play. This is where I want the ball to go. And to some degree, it doesn't always matter who it's going to. And it sounds like, and we'll see, it sounds like Tommy maybe doesn't quite view it that way. But again, this is all very much we'll see.
Yeah, can I steal Lance Reisland's
Yes,
players over plays slogan? Look, maybe Tommy will have a bit more of that, or at least maybe it will give off that vibe a bit more. But yeah, I mean, Tommy Rees, even when we talked to him today, like made the point, look, any play caller in the NFL, things are going to be slightly different. Yes, it's the same playbook. Yes, Kevin is going to keep the final say over some things, but that's all pretty standard across the league in terms of your head coach responsibilities and what that guy is going to do. So overall, I think it will shake some things up, but we're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah. All right. So Tommy Rees taking over as the Browns play caller against the Jets. So here's what we're going to do here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. It is a little bit shorter today, but we really wanted to touch on the Paul DePodesta thing. And let's face it, this is a 2-6 team versus a 1-7 team. So not a ton of storylines heading into this game. We are going to take a break. Lance Reisland is going to give us his scouting report on both sides of the ball for the Jets. Then we'll come back and we'll make our picks for Sunday's game at MetLife Stadium. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, and now we welcome on, as we do every week, Lance Reisland to preview the upcoming opponent, the New York Jets. Lance, how are you?
Dan, I'm well. How are you, buddy? Welcome back.
Doing well. Yeah, it's been a little while since we talked with the bye week and everything, so good to see you again. You've been knee-deep in high school football playoffs and all sorts of stuff. Yep. So, all right, we're going to talk some NFL football here, the New York Jets. Fire sale this week, or at least a bit of a fire sale. So let's start there. With losing Sauce Gardner, losing Quinnen Williams, what did the Jets lose in those two players not being there?
Well, Quinnen Williams is arguably a top 5 to 10 defensive tackle. He plays the run very well. He pass rushes very well. He's one of those unique talents where he can play all 3 downs. He can give you speed rush. He's kind of a version, in a weird way. He's kind of like, in my opinion, like a Mason Graham, where he can, obviously he's a little bit, older and, has more credibility so far, but a guy who can play all the downs, just really, really elite inside there. You got to account for him on every play. Phillips is good too. McDonald's good, but he was the one guy, the Myles Garrett, right? The guy who's really, really got to block. And then Sauce Gardner is top 3 to 5 defensive back, which, in that same realm with Denzel Ward, where whoever he's on, he's probably going to have the advantage. And not to mention, two guys, when you listen to them talk and you go back, when I start doing work, a couple weeks before each game, guys who did all the talking, guys who did that were really involved in a lot of stuff and now aren't. So that's going to be interesting. I think it's a game the Browns really going to jump on these guys offensively.
Yeah, and you wonder how they're going to respond, right, as a football team when they go through losing players like that who were kind of leaders in that room, who were parts of the future. I mean, I was listening before we came on to Garrett Wilson talking about, personally, emotionally, it hurts to lose those guys. From a football standpoint, you just kind of try to see the vision of the front office or whatever. But that's got to be hard for those veterans in that room, even the younger veterans like a Garrett Wilson, to sort of look at this. And look, in football, you always have to go out and compete. You always have to go 100%. But there does have to be some kind of mental toll that's going to carry over to Sunday for this team.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've learned a lot from working with you last 4 years. And one thing that I don't take into account is like, building toward the future, where the money's at. You can always tell how teams are formed and things I've learned, working with you over the years. But for me, it's all about football. And when I think about teams doing what the Jets do, I think there's no other there's not a worse thing when people talk. The most overused word, you heard me say this before, in football is the word culture. And tanking is a culture killer. It's not what you say, it's what you do. And for me, doing these kind of things the Jets are doing, obviously I've learned a little bit more. But as a football coach, you're like, all right, we're taking away all your bullets, but you're going to go to the shooting range and kind of deal. So I don't know. I'm not in to what the Jets are doing. I think it sets a bad precedent. It kind of says, hey, if things don't go right, don't worry, we'll tank. We'll get better players the year after. So I think the Browns are, in my opinion, I think the Browns are doing it right. I've had people argue with me this week, winning is losing. And I could not, me, Dan, I could not disagree more with that adage. You got to go out and win, try to win every single game. So I think this hurts the Jets. And to say where their mentality is, if you can, this is the type of game, if you can get a couple punches in early, they'll probably fold.
I will say the NFL adage is, coaches and players don't tank, front offices do. Just meaning coaches and players are always going to play hard. They're always going to try to win. There's just too much on the line each week. So
Yeah,
we'll see how that translates into this Sunday. Let's stay on the defense since that's where we started with that fire sale. Aaron Glenn, that's his side of the football. That's where he came from when he was the defensive coordinator in Detroit. So tell me about this Jets defense, what they do well. And I mean, how can the Browns attack this? Do they have the ability to shut down the run game like we've seen so many teams be able to do? Or could this look a little more like the Miami game?
I think it could look a little bit more like the Miami game. I also think with Tommy Rees calling plays, you're going to get more spread sets. You're going to get more motion, more movement, which I think will get some of those guys out of the box, not only in the pass game, but also in the run game. So I think you're going to get some just, basic still concepts. I still like to see the Browns. The one time they had success this year, they ran gap schemes, and you and I talked about that with Miami, and then they went away from that last week again. So I'd like to, I think with gap schemes, the big difference between gap schemes and zone schemes for me has always been reactionary versus attacking. When you're running zone schemes, it's 2 for 2, a defensive lineman and a linebacker, but you have to adjust to whatever the linebacker does. And in a gap scheme, it's still 2 for 2 on the double teams, but you have much more of an idea who's going to come off because it's all about angles and aggression. So I think if they go back to that, I think, Phillips is tough inside. McDonald's is a speed rusher. He's not very stout against the run. Johnson's another guy, likes to rush the passer. They got to get to the second level. Williams is good. Sherwood's a good tackle. Their linebackers are good tacklers. Secondary, Moore is an okay corner. Obviously, losing Sauce Williams, you can attack these guys in the secondary. I think they're going to have to crowd the line of scrimmage because I don't think they're very stout in the front seven. Again, after losing Williams, that's a big loss because he's a guy you can really count on anchoring in that B gap as a run stopper. So, yeah, I think they can attack. I think, I don't think Sherwood and Williams cover as well as they do stop the run. Moore's an okay corner. They're okay. Like I said, they're not, this is when you watch them on film, they're not terrible. There's some teams you watch and go, wow, they're terrible. This is not a terrible team, in my opinion, if you break down the film. They just have some missing pieces. And then they got rid of some of their key pieces. So I did not think they were that far away from being competitive. Now I think they are pushing towards non-competitive, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. These are all NFL players, and when people say teams aren't very good, it always worries me because these guys are real. All these guys are good.
So let's stay on this side of the ball, just from a Browns perspective, because they're expecting to get Cedric Tillman back this week. How does that help this Browns offense to add Ced back in the mix? He's the only receiver that scored a touchdown this season. So, look, I don't know Ced if he's a long-term number 2 guy, but the Browns need him to come in and be their number 2 guy. How does that help them offensively?
Well, he gives them length, right? They don't have any length. They don't have any size with length, too. He's a bigger guy. He's a get off. Ced is a get off the bus first guy, right? And you and I watch him all the time in practice. And the thing I like about Ced is that he's physically gifted. And sometimes, you go over production versus potential, all those kind of things. And he hasn't produced as much as you'd like because of injury. But there are moments where you go, okay, there's the guy they like, right? So he immediately gives you 50-50 ball winning, which they don't have one guy on the outside that can do that. Judy's not a 50-50 guy. Gives him a red zone target. It gives him, on my call sheet, I had get out of jail. You're struggling finding a play in the red zone, throw it up. And, maybe throw a one-step fade or a quick slant. There's things that he gives you with his big body in the red zone that really helps. I also think it allows you to move Jerry Jeudy in the slot a little bit. And then you can get him on some corner routes, maybe get him isolated on a safety, maybe some underneath crossing routes against some of those backers that don't run I don't say they don't run very well, but they're looking to tackle. They're not great cover guys. So maybe you can move Jeudy to the slot a little bit as well and get him some touches. I would like to see Tommy Rees force feed Jerry Jeudy the ball early to get his, kind of get his mojo going.
Okay, let's move to that Jets offense. We'll start with Justin Fields, a guy. He's one of those quarterbacks that he's going to have a long career because fan bases are always going to talk themselves into Justin Fields. And then you actually, you see him on the field with your team and you see his limitations. Now, that being said, there are certainly things that he does very well too, specifically in the run game. How has Justin Fields looked so far? And we're just going to assume for for this pod that he's going to be the starter because I don't believe they've said yet if it's going to be him or Tyrod Taylor.
Well, I'm actually, this is going to go into my my Dylan Gabriel kind of folder. I'm actually a lot higher in Justin Fields than a lot of people. I watched him last week against Cincinnati, and then I took all the clips of just his throws, and then I took all his clips and watched his footwork, and he does some really good things with his feet, both in the pocket, outside the pocket. I think keeping him in the pocket is the best way to go. He's a little bit inconsistent there. Now, what they do very, very well is they do a lot of run options. You always hear the term run-pass options, where they're going to do they have Breece Hall back there, who is an elite tailback. So they have two guys that can really run. So in the run game, they can not only do the plus one where the tailback becomes a fullback, and then Fields becomes a tailback, but they can also do the run. So they're going to run. They'll run, dart or counter one way, and then Breece Hall will run. And if that end closes, he just gives it to Breece Hall. So it's kind of that, zone read kind of option, game where the quarterback always has the option to pull it. That's where he's really good. You also in the red zone have to watch his feet. And then I think, which is the most important thing for a quarterback, at third and medium, scrambling from the non-designed runs on third and medium, which I think he can do very, very well. Like I said, I think he's been kind of handicapped. He does have some limitations, but this is a talented guy. And if he gets hot, he has physical tools. And any guys that, you think about it, they got a good running back, a quarterback that can make plays, and a really good receiver. So the Browns are going to have to play well because, they got guys who can go get the ball. And that's always an issue with an offense.
I feel like over the last few years, and obviously the Browns have that playoff appearance on their resume, but I feel like these teams are just like that Spider-Man meme in a lot of ways, where they're just pointing at each other. It's two Spider-Men pointing at each other. It's just, you can sit here and list off, I like this guy. I like this guy. This guy's good. Like I could say that with Breece Hall. I mean, we're not that far removed from Breece Hall being a top fantasy guy, right? Garrett Wilson. Love Garrett Wilson. Justin Fields, again, I'm not as bullish on him as you are, but he's fine. There's pieces to like on this team, but they just haven't been able to put it together to be successful. How do they attack this Browns defense? And let's not forget that Myles Garrett, before he set a new record against the Patriots, his previous team record of 4.5 sacks came against Justin Fields when he was with the Bears. So is there a way for this Jets offense to take advantage of some of the things the Browns defense does?
Well, what the Browns have done, how teams have attacked, the Browns, McDaniels and some of these guys, is they're using the Browns' aggression against them. They're running counters against them. They're running traps against them. They're letting these guys get upfield because that's what they do, the penetration. And then obviously one of the things that I just wrote about was setting the edge. The more I watch film, I'm like, wow, they're really struggling setting the edge. So, what teams are doing is they're moving the tight end, kind of what the Browns do with Njoku. They have not done it with him this year very much, but that pin and pull where they're going to take that tight end, flex him out from the tackle about 3 to 5 yards, and block that defensive end down and set the edge immediately with that guy. Teams have done that very well. McDaniels did that very well with a bunch of different zone kind of schemes, pin and pull schemes last week. He actually ran power and then pitched the ball the other way on a couple plays. So just giving them false reads because they're well coached and they run around, using their aggression against them, trying to get their linebackers against Breece Hall in coverage would be a good route to go against the Browns. Maybe getting a tight end against Grant Delpit. If Grant's very good against the run, but can be had in the pass game sometimes. That's your best bet. That's not a lot what they do. They like to, they're pretty simple on offense. They're not going to, where if you look at McDaniels or a Todd Monken, they're always kind of week to week. They're changing things. They haven't really changed a lot on offense. It's going to be tough sledding unless they can double on Myles. But they got some other matchups inside that are going to be tough for them as well.
Okay. Browns at Jets, Sunday, 1:00. Lance, as always, you get to be our first up making your pick for this game.
Well, it's not always, once again, that's why Vegas always wins, right? But, I just, once again, I think this matchup is really, really tough for the Jets. They have fire sale. The Jets, the Browns have lost 12 in a row away. The Jets are 0-5 at home. I like the Browns. I think the Browns are still playing to win, and I think that's important. I got the Browns. They're going to score 24 points. They're going to win 24-14.
Okay, there we go. Our first pick here on our preview pod coming from Lance Reisland. Joins us every Thursday to give us a scouting report on the upcoming opponent. Joins us on Tuesdays to look back on the film. We'll get back to that next week when we have some film to watch from this Jets game. And, of course, he joins us on our post-game show, which we stream live on our YouTube channel, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com on Sunday nights. We go live usually between 8 and 8:15, and Lance joins us for the back half of that. So Lance, as always, I appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Thanks to Lance Reisman for that scouting report. Back with Mary Kay and Ashley, and we are going to make our picks for Sunday's game between the Browns and Jets. It opened, actually, as the Jets favored by 2.5 points. Then the Jets had their little mini fire sale, and suddenly the Browns were 2.5 point favorites. I haven't checked the line here as of Thursday at about 6 o'clock, but I'm going to assume the Browns are still favored. Ashley, you said you have a pick already written down, so I guess that means you get to lead us off.
All right. So as I was reading up about the Jets and the stats, there are some concerning numbers here in terms of offensively, the Jets outranking the Browns. That includes an overall offense. They're averaging just over 300 yards per game. The Browns are only at 263.5. There's also the fact the Jets average 21 points per game. The Browns only average 15.8. However, what I can't get past is the fact I think that Jets defense is so bad the Browns are going to be able to take advantage the way they did against the Miami Dolphins. And I say that in large part because we know about the fire sale the Jets had earlier this week. No more Sauce Gardner, no more Quinnen Williams. Things I think got, at least on paper, which always be careful with that, a lot easier for this Cleveland Browns team. So I think it's going to be a weird game. I think it's still somehow going to be close. So I'm going Browns 22, Jets 16.
Okay, Browns breaking that 20-point barrier for Ashley here. So I had talked to both of you on, I think it was when we were out here on Monday, and I said, I always talk about that first instinct that I have for a game. And for whatever reason, I was feeling like I might end up picking the Jets. Now, I wasn't sure. Then Tuesday happened, and I can't pick them because when you trade away two key defensive players like that, it's not even so much the talent drop. It's what does that do to a locker room, right? What does that do when you're basically telling your team, we're focused on the 26 draft, we're focused on the 27 draft? What does that do to a culture? Aaron Glenn is always saying weird stuff in press conferences. So in that regard, with the trading away and acquiring picks and the head coach saying weird things, sometimes I get some Hugh Jackson vibes there, and some 2016, 2017 Browns vibes from that football team. All of that said, I do think Tommy Rees is going to maybe unlock a little something in this offense. I think that change is going to spark something for the Browns. I don't think the offense is going to be great. I also remember the last time Myles Garrett went against Justin Fields, he had 4.5 sacks. He just broke that record a couple weeks ago. So I think Myles is in line to maybe potentially have another big game. So I'm going to pick the Browns to win. I think it's going to be low scoring. I'm not going to pick them to score over 20 points. I'm going to say that the Browns win this game 17. You know what? I'm going to go really close here. I'm going to go Browns 17, Jets 16. Mary Kay, what about you?
That is the exact score.
No way.
Absolutely 100%. The whole time I've been sitting here, I knew my score a while ago.
Well, I can change it then. I can go. Okay.
No, keep it. That's totally fine. Although as I find myself picking the Browns, I really have to wonder if they're going to be able to pull it off. They have lost 12 straight on the road. They've lost 12 straight games on the road. They can't seem to win on the road. I don't know where the offense is going to come from. I don't know where Tommy is going to pull points from and yards from and touchdowns from. I don't know how he's going to do it. He's going to have to pull a rabbit out of the hat. That Miami Dolphins game, it took them 4 takeaways to win that game. Are the Browns going to get 4 takeaways in this game? We'll have to see. So I think it's going to be a tough game to win on the road, even though it's the 1-7 Jets. Sometimes a team pulls together in the face of adversity, and they just might do that because they are up there saying, we can beat the Cleveland Browns. This is a game we are going to win. So we'll have to see how it goes, but I can't bring myself to pick the Browns to lose to the 1-7 Jets. So I am going to take them to win 17-16, but I do not feel great about that pick.
Yeah, well, there we go. And listen, obviously we don't cheer, but it gets real dark if they lose this game to the New York Jets. Well, then we revisit this Paul DePodesta and who's safe and who's not conversation, all of that, but we'll save that. We'll see what happens on Sunday. We will go live on Sunday night like we always do between 8-8:15 on our YouTube channel. That's Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Also get subscribed to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Find our socials, Orange and Brown Talk on Instagram, Orange Brown Talk on Twitter. Our guy Dom still pushing out videos for us on the socials. So make sure you check those out and get subscribed, follow, whatever you got to do on all of those. Appreciate Lance for the scouting report. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.